make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, this is Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Today is the 810th anniversary of the Magna Carta, which seems a good enough excuse for me to step back into the show as host before I fly off to the USA. Maybe forever, who knows, depends if I can learn the language. In the meantime, there's so much to talk about here in the UK where free speech continues to be under threat. On the show tonight, football fans could be banned from games if they chant certain songs. We're going to be debating the limits of tolerance on the terraces and also...
Don't come back! You're banned!
Is Banter about to be banned in pubs? I'm going to be discussing Labour's new bill with free speech campaigner Lord Toby Young. Plus, what's happening?
This is a public broadcast apology direct from Channel 4.
We're going to find out later on, and I've got two wonderful comedians who are going to be answering some rather crazy cultural developments from this live studio audience. But first, here's the news.
Good evening. We have some breaking news at 7 p.m. this evening. For a third consecutive day, Iran and Israel are continuing to exchange ballistic missiles. The latest fired by Iran in the last few minutes. These are the latest pictures, which appear to show many of the missiles being intercepted over Tel Aviv. Well, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins me now with the latest. Mark, G7 leaders are calling for de-escalation, but there's no sign of any let-up from either side yet.
No, Israel is intent on pushing through with its aim of trying to ensure that Iran no longer has the capability to build a nuclear weapon, as Israel and, of course, many Western nations believe it is intent on doing. Let's look at those images, the latest images that have been seen tonight over Jerusalem, over Tel Aviv and over Haifa. We're told of direct hits over the northern city of Haifa, explosions in the skies as well over Tel Aviv and over Jerusalem as the missile defense array system springs into action, as it's done, of course, on so many occasions. It's well used to aerial threats, but the difficulty for this aerial array system, as good as it is, you're dealing with ballistic missiles which in the terminal phase, as they plummet towards the Earth, having re-entered the atmosphere, they reach phenomenal speeds. They are difficult to shoot down, and some have got through, which of course we've seen today in that community just south of Tel Aviv, where an apartment block suffered a direct hit from a ballistic missile, and at least 10 people have been killed, dozens of others injured. And on the images you just saw there, you saw an impact on the ground there, and that looked either to be a ballistic missile directly going down or perhaps the result of an interception and then whatever was left hitting the ground. They could be just as deadly, of course, these huge payloads that were in the sort of interceptor missiles and indeed in the ballistic missiles coming across, but that was certainly going at a rate of knots into the ground there, so it may well have been a ballistic missile impact. As I say, we're getting reports that the northern port city of Haifa has suffered a direct hit in the last few minutes. Now, the Israeli ambulance medical services are not at this stage reporting any casualties, but you know, we're only 20 minutes into this latest alert, the second wave of ballistic missiles launched by Iran today. We had a wave that came in late this afternoon, very unusual in daylight hours for the Iranians to expose their missile launching systems, which are often on the back of trucks that they take out there. They fire the ballistic missiles into or towards Israel, but they're exposed at daytime. So that's why we see many of these launches taking place now in the evening hours. But of course, given that they're now launching them during the day, that signals a change of tactics from the Iranians. We'll leave you with these images looking out into the skyline over central and northern Israel as more ballistic missiles have come into the atmosphere over central and northern Israel from Iran.
Mark, thank you. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White there reporting on the latest conflict between Israel and Iran. You're up to date. I'll have more news for you in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we cast our gaze across the spectrum of culture, current affairs and politics, and we try and annoy all the right people. So we're going to kick off tonight with a debate about football, which is a topic about which I know quite literally nothing, but I do know a thing or two about free speech. So football fans could be handed a criminal record and banned from watching games if they sing certain chants. For years, supporters have sung controversial songs on the terraces, but recently the Crown Prosecution Service has clamped down on some of these, particularly when they have used homophobic language. If fans chant or even post these slurs online, they could be charged with a hate crime, meaning they may receive a fine and the police can apply for a banning order. So join me to discuss this subject. I have writer and producer Cass Pennant and the political commentator Samuel Sweek. Welcome both to the show. Cass, I want to come to you first. You've come a long way. You're a writer, a producer. You used to be involved, actually, with hooliganism, and you understand what's going on the terraces, on the kind of attitudes that lead to these kind of chants. Do you think they should be banned?
Banned if they cross the red line, yeah, certainly.
So can you tell me what that red line is and who decides who that red line would be?
Well, at the moment, the state wants to decide it outside of football, forces outside of football. But, you know, in the 60s and 70s, chanting that was indecent, racist, whatever you want to call it, was quite common right up to the 80s, I would say. But what I found interesting, and a lot of the tragedies were the 70s and 80s, you know, Wales, Munich, things like that. But what I found is the fans police themselves.
Right.
They had their own red lines, you know.
Well, it's interesting to me because, you know, I don't know anything about football whatsoever. I've been told by friends of mine who are fans that when they're chanting this stuff on the terraces, they don't really mean it. It's a kind of theatricality. Do you accept that point of view?
I get where they're coming from, and I know exactly what they're saying. They mean it in the context of that arena. The arena of football, that world, that language, that perimeters, what's right, what's OK in football is obviously not OK at home or the workplace, yeah? And the same people wouldn't use that language.
Yes.
You know, I remember taking my son to his first game at 7, and he's, obviously I've got a past in football, and everyone knows that, you can Google that. And his nan said, don't get him in no trouble. And when he's 7, you know what I mean? When he come home, his nan said, how was your first game? He went, Nan, grown men singing nursery rhymes and grown men swearing. You know what I mean? And that's through the eyes of a 7-year-old. It made me think a lot. You know, another experience I had was talking to a barrister in a bar. He was asking my experience on racism in football, how I dealt with it and stuff like that. Later, just a few years ago, he had a case under the 1991 Serious Offences Act, Football Offences Act. And it was on, I was dealing with the YID word, you know, trying to clamp down like they're doing now. That's when they first sort of started that just a few years ago. So you had 2 West Ham lads after West Ham-Tottenham game had been picked out for chanting the word foreskins, yeah? What had happened beforehand, it was West Ham fans facing Tottenham fans, and the Tottenham fans beforehand were chanting to the same group of West Ham fans, pikeys. You know what I mean? So you had this banter and this rivalry going backwards and forwards. It's a few hundred fans. Not one fan complained. There was a line of police down the middle. They didn't complain. They didn't arrest anybody, nothing. It was Monday, the club directors, and both clubs have got Jewish directors. You know what I mean? Said, we're not having this. Went through the crowd. It's like me picking all you guys, yeah, if you're all chanting, which one was chanting, which one was miming, which one was laughing. You know what I mean? They picked 2 lads out, mid-20s, and the barrister said they're going to lose their jobs, never been in trouble before. But straight from Magistrates Court. What you explained to me in the bar, I need you to come up as a witness, an expert witness understanding the football arena. It's different to the street arena.
So I think this really gets to the heart of it. I'd just like to apologise if anyone's upset about the racial epithets. Of course, we are dealing with exactly this kind of language being used in the context of football. So that's why, obviously, these words are being used. But, Samuel, this is an interesting case that Cass is making, that it's not really meant. It is a kind of performance. And in the context of being in the on the terraces, everyone knows and understands that. Do you take that point?
I mean, like, yeah, to an extent, yeah, I do. I mean, like, Cass's insight there is absolutely fascinating, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of complexities of a lot of words, a lot of actions that people can do and have said over many years on the terraces. But I mean, look at it from one perspective. Is like I take my children to football games when I can. And, you know, the atmosphere is generally very nice. We tend to, I mean, and hand on heart, we tend to actually go to women's football because we can actually afford that. And that's a different issue for another day.
Yeah, let's leave that one for now.
Yeah, but the atmosphere is always very nice, and I think that is something that the governing bodies of football need to take seriously. And they need to also think that who's coming, as in my children watching, other children watching, but also players coming through the ranks over time. And I understand the argument that it's a theatre, it's all, you know, kind of part of what has been the history of football for a very long time in terms of, like, fans. But, I mean, it's unbelievable to me that we are in the year that we're in, and say, for example, there has been no out-gay football players in the top tier of football. And, like, I did a bit of Googling before this. There is nearly 600 players in the Premier League. And then if you take that back the 30-something years the Premier League's been going for, you're telling me not a single one of those players was actually gay. But I think that the point I'm making with that is that the potentially hostile environment those players would face if they did come out as gay would be horrendous, firstly. But, I mean, and that kind of brings into into light how serious it is when we sit here and say it's all part of it. It absolutely should not be part of it.
Well, Samuel, let's take that to Cass, because I want to mention that a specific point off the back of what Samuel is talking about, which is the Chelsea fans being, when they sing about them as rent boys, that's the phrase that they use, which many people are taking as a homophobic slur. I doubt that the people chanting that genuinely believe that the players are selling themselves for sex. I don't think they do. It's not real, is it?
It's exactly the same as they sang to the Korean player played for Tottenham. You know what I mean?
So it's not authentic.
It's to offend the rival fans. Yeah.
To offend them.
Yeah. The players, if they can help it, in that arena of a rivalry.
Yes.
They said the same thing, and the same applies to what Sam's just explained to you guys now. Applies to racism. Exactly the same. Yeah. But in the arena of football, what I hear and what's said, it's like someone who's offended by swearing. It's how it's said.
So you're not offended by racial language?
How it's said and how it's meant. I'm not offended by swearing, but other people might be.
OK.
And it's how it's said. But if someone said to me, swore in a certain way,
yes, and
I'm on a tube, or use offensive language in a certain way, I wouldn't accept it.
So what
in
about...
football, I know the intent is a different meaning. It's a different arena, and I think all things should be judged to that arena where it's come from. I'm going to give you an example. If you're going to ban banter and sanitise football where there's no banter, right, or no barroom talk kind of thing, you know what I mean, that wouldn't be acceptable at home, then where do you draw the line? Football's so often used because it's working class kids. It's used as an easy scapegoat,
yes,
easy call-out, because all parties are not bothered with it, civil rights, everything else, no one's bothered. But if you've done the same, there's other areas, think like our forces, right? The rivalry in our forces into rivalry is pretty serious. Their slang book can beat anything with football.
But of course there aren't children there, are there? I mean, that's Sam's point.
Yeah, but again, it's the contents it's in. Like I said, these two lads were going to lose their job. And I went to court and I thought, even with my track record, it's a risk. But the barrister said, the judges on the bench have never seen inside of the football arena. Yeah, and too many people talk what they don't know about. They're not in that arena. Right. You know, if you want to talk about racism, talk to the black fans, not the people outside.
OK, well, let me ask you about that, Sam, because you've mentioned the idea of children being present, and Cass has made the case that it's all about the context. But do you think it might be too far when clubs are calling on the law to get involved? We know that the Crown Prosecution Service has said that it's going to eliminate certain forms of chant. Do you think that's a step too far?
No, I don't, actually. I don't think if it's not acceptable for me to say it or anyone to say it in the street or in the workplace, it absolutely should not be acceptable in a football stand. I take the point that like rivalry and stuff, people take it incredibly seriously in football. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I couldn't for the life of me think that would ever be acceptable. And I think that, again, I go back to the point about creating a hostile environment for people coming into the game as players or as fans.
OK, but what about the Crown Prosecution Service has been specifically targeting what they call tragedy chanting? So, for instance, the people who sadly died in the 1958 Munich air disaster, and, of course, there were a number of Manchester United fans there, and so it is chanted towards them as a provocation, as a way to cause offence. But that kind of speech wouldn't be criminalised. I mean, it would be distasteful, but it wouldn't be criminalised in any other circumstance, would it?
I mean, perhaps not. No, I mean, I think maybe that's where I would personally draw the line. I think it's distasteful. I don't think it's very funny. But I think when you're talking about things that are protected under someone's equalities, in terms of like the law, yeah, that needs to be taken a lot more seriously.
OK, well, this is a much bigger topic than unfortunately we have time for tonight. But Samuel and Cass, thank you both so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Next on Free Speech Nation, I've got my fantastic comedian panel. They're going to be answering questions from this wonderful studio audience, so please don't go anywhere.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Christys here.
I'm Michelle G. Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GBNews family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. And, by the way, happy Father's Day. Big shout out to all my illegitimate children out there. Sorry, I never call, but can't be bothered. I also have two fathers here. I've got Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. You proud to be a father, Leo?
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah?
It's really great. It's funny how there's all this propaganda goes out in the media. Don't have kids. Live a single lifestyle. Have sex with as many people as possible. Take lots of drugs and live a completely individualistic, hedonistic life. And having kids is the best thing in the world. I think so many people are, say, oh, I'm depressed. I need antidepressants and everything's so sad. It's like, no, just have a kid.
Also, except you can still have kids and have sex with loads of different people. I mean,
you can do that. You do it. You're living proof of that, Steve.
Yeah. I'm having a great day.
And to be fair, Leo, like having a child is a bit of a Russian roulette. You don't know what you're going to get. Like you've had good ones.
It usually comes out human.
So. Yeah. On the whole.
I love how Russian roulette is your go-to for you don't know what you're going to get. Like Forrest Gump was sat right there, but you went for the.
I went for the more macabre image. That's me all over. Anyway,
changed, man.
Well, let's lighten the mood by getting some questions from the audience. Our first question is coming from Michael.
Good evening, Andrew. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Will the US be drawn into the Iran-Israel conflict?
I did say let's lighten the mood, Michael. You didn't really listen to the instruction there, but yes, well, of course, that's rumbling on after a few days. And, Steve, is it not fair to assume that Donald Trump was informed in advance? I know he says he wasn't, but surely he was informed.
Definitely informed. Yeah. I mean, probably not involved in the decision, but surely informed, because the first level of strikes were the correct level to make negotiation easier.
Yes.
Because they could have just hit the oil refineries first of all, just try and ruin the economy, but they did and they didn't even successfully wipe out all nuclear capability, but there's enough attack to then, when Donald Trump says, you better sit down and talk, otherwise things are really going to go bad, it's going to help the discussion.
Well, you think this is going to force people to the negotiating table?
Yes, at some point, definitely. I mean, I don't want to get all Doctor Who about this, but at some point, all of this ends with two people sat down talking.
Perhaps, but, Leo, I'm a bit sceptical about this because, I mean, the Ayatollah of Iran for many years has been posting on Twitter, not being ambiguous, we want to wipe Israel off the map entirely.
Pretty much Iran was set up with the express purpose of exterminating the Jews, and they've had half a century to prepare for it. And then the chance comes along, Israel declares war on them, and they're just like run around, fire some missiles into the air. I love it, Trump, by the way. I mean, obviously, America is already involved in this because they're not flying Scottish-made planes into Iranian airspace.
No, well, they wouldn't work, would they?
No, they wouldn't. Actually, I mean, maybe Scotland would have made great. We make good steam trains.
That's
we have
true.
a steam steam-powered jet fighter. But yeah, I mean, I just think like Trump. His whole campaign thing was like, oh, if I was in charge, there wouldn't be any war. Everybody'd be too scared to have a war. Like the moment he gets in, everybody starts fighting.
Quite. I mean, isn't this the issue with Iran? Is that ultimately, you know, we're going back to the question of appeasement back in the Second World War. You know, a lot of people said, you know, let's just let Hitler go into Czechoslovakia. Let's just let him go into Austria. It's fine. You know, we'll just turn a blind eye. Turned out that was the wrong move. Yeah. And you know, I don't think you can accuse the Iranian regime of being ambiguous when it comes to their attitude towards Israel. They do want to eliminate it. There's no getting around that. If they had a nuke, that's what they'd do, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what I was saying. You don't want to have them having nuclear capability. Do you know what? People talk some trash about the Iran deal, but at least they weren't refining stuff. This is what it all comes down to, isn't it? The enrichment level of uranium. You need it something like 3-point-something% for fuel, and then well up there at 60% for weapons. Unless they're trying to make some ace electricity, they don't need to enrich higher than that. So as soon as they do that, then they're breaching the deal. But sadly, the way Trump version 1 did it, instead of saying this deal's got flaws, let's fix it, it was like, we're pulling out, let's show how strong we are. And now look, we are. They're doing the enrichment.
Yeah. But this is, I mean, it's pretty much over already. It was over on the first night. I mean, Israel's taken out their airstrips, they've taken out air defence, they completely own the Iranian airspace now. So it's not as if it's, you know, like Ukraine and Russia to, you know, with both sides having strengths and both sides, you know, not having complete dominance. I mean, Israel has got complete dominance, and it's kind of embarrassing for Iran. I almost feel, I think I'm going to donate to Hezbollah. I feel that bad.
I think Hezbollah's pretty much gone at this point, isn't it? You know. Okay, well, look, glad we solved the Middle East crisis there. Let's move on to another question now. This question is coming from Ryan. Where's Ryan?
Andrew, hi, good to see you. Following that question with another very serious question, would you like a slice of Pride crumble?
It's so flippant, Ryan. This is, of course, the story. We all saw the pictures, I hope anyway. They were reported this week from the House of Lords. The House of Lords canteen were serving Pride crumble. There's the picture. Pride crumble is a sort of rainbow-coloured dessert with a bit of custard on the side for the yellow stripe. I mean, it looks pretty grotesque. Leo, I mean, I mean, there's a taste issue, isn't it?
My mum, we found a box of Neapolitan ice cream at the back of her freezer that had been there since 1982, and it looked exactly like that.
But do you think it's well-intentioned, or do you think the Lords are... I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it?
No, I mean, I just don't think they're reading the room. I mean, Pride, everybody's got Pride fatigue. You know what I mean? It was fun for a couple of decades to, you know, everybody gets their bum out and runs around and, you know, dangles their glittery bits in front of children who've been dragged there by liberal parents. But, you know, now, you know, things have rolled back. Pride itself has actually become quite a controversial thing, because it's eliminated, like they're pushing out lesbians, gays and bisexual people, which is surely, of all the people that, you know, should be at Pride, it should be the people that set it up.
I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because Pride Stroud, they put out a statement saying that they didn't want any LGB views at Pride. Well, it's kind of a gay thing. So you might get a few of them, I'm afraid. And, of course, Liverpool Pride has now backed out because it lost its funding from Barclays. So there is, and you're noticing, aren't you, Steve? A lot of corporations, they're not putting the Pride logo up this year. Something's changed, hasn't it?
And it's questionable for the reason of doing it, but I like that it's being done. I preferred the days when I didn't need to know what my ice cream thought about any political issue.
Yes, exactly.
And it made it simpler. You could buy a thing because it was a thing, and then people could have their opinions, and you could talk to them. It's very difficult to negotiate with an ice cream. That's what I've watched.
But that crumble as well, I mean, it doesn't actually resemble the Pride flag at all. It just looks like it's gone off.
Yeah,
like, you know.
I mean, and also I love the fact there'd be some sort of meeting going, OK, we need to try and stand up for the rights of oppressed people. What should you do? A dessert! So that's going to make a blind bit of difference. And they say that they don't know which flag of the Pride flags. Is it including trans issues? I don't know. There's a sign next to it that says may contain nuts. So it might be.
Well,
and yes, some of the messaging by the Pride people is so sort of just blatantly virtue signalling. Like I think it's South Yorkshire Fire Services said, you know, oh, we're not going to discriminate. You know, they covered themselves in rainbow paint and stuff. We're not going to discriminate. We're going to as if like previously they'd been letting gay people burn to death and hadn't been, you know, spraying the hose in their window.
OK, well, the House of Lords has. Thank you, Leo.
That wasn't
it wasn't even supposed to be a double entendre, so I don't have to apologise. He's so into double entendres, he does it inadvertently. That's where it's got to. So anyway, I should say that the House of Lords has declined to comment because they're too busy baking warm desserts to fight civil rights issues. Let's move on to Ivor. Have we got Ivor? Ivan, sorry.
Should it be possible for To Kill a Mockingbird to be read out loud in class?
So I read about this week, this Spanish teacher in Washington who got fired for reading from To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, I should give some context to this because he was I think he was in the canteen, he was talking to a bunch of students, and they were saying that their English teacher had refused to read out the racial epithets in To Kill a Mockingbird. And he said, well, that's silly because, you know, that goes against what Harper Lee wanted in the novel. It kind of defangs the anti-racist message of the book if you take all the racism out. So he read it out loud. He didn't know he was being filmed, which is, I mean, it's annoying for two reasons. Firstly, he's reading the uncensored book. You shouldn't get fired for that. Yeah. Secondly, these kids, you're not allowed to just post secret recordings of people on the internet. That is illegal. Yeah. So, you know, there's a number of issues going on here, aren't there?
Look, and the complaint that they made was inappropriate communication. It wasn't communicating, he was reading a bit. It's not...
Maybe they mean Harper Lee.
Well, then...
Her inappropriate communication.
Fire her for it.
Yeah, get rid of Harper Lee.
On the phone.
I think she's dead, though, isn't she?
Well, that makes it very difficult.
That's true, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it was simply a case of saying, look, if you don't have the ability for a character in a book to be bad... Yes. Then you don't get the dynamics that's required to show that bad people say bad things.
So this reminds me very much of when they published a version of Huckleberry Finn without any racial words whatsoever. And, of course, it's an anti-racist satire. It's all about the idea that this sort of pious adult Christian community are quite happy with slavery, and it takes a small boy to see through the moral quagmire. And so, you know, if you sanitise it in this way, you're sort of implying that there never was any racism, aren't you?
Yeah, I think they are. And I think that's the sort of world that the communists who are basically running all our public services would like to create. You know, this sort of blank slate idea that nothing was ever bad, nothing, unless they can pick and choose.
And what about this guy being fired, though? I mean,
same thing happened to me when I read out passages from Mein Kampf. I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. But also,
was that in a history lesson?
What's he doing? It's his fault for trying to teach the kids that racism is bad. It's like if you try and do something like that, then you deserve to get called racist. The first thing he did wrong was try to be good.
Can I just say one thing he did wrong is he failed to read the room. So he's in the canteen and he said, "No, I'd read it out." Yes. One of the kids hands him the book. Come on, of course they're filming at this stage. All right, then, reads it out, and then, of course, it's being filmed.
Well, this is why they should get rid of phones in schools, right, firstly. Anything like that. But, of course, you must assume that everything you say in front of a bunch of kids is being recorded,
Especially if it's kids going, would you say that word? Yeah, of course I would. Click. Of course they're filming it straight away. They want a copy.
Yeah, but he shouldn't be fired just for being a bit dim, should he? You know, it's not his fault.
That's not what he's being fired for, I suppose.
No, exactly. He's being fired for literature, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to happen there. It was going to happen at the staff party karaoke when you start singing some Jay-Z. So
there we go, exactly. OK, although I think Jay-Z has less of a positive message than Harper Lee, to be fair. Well, anyway, we did reach out to West Valley School District. Nothing so far. Anyway, I'll keep you posted, though, throughout the night. Coming up, we're going to be going through all the groups that are ignoring the landmark Supreme Court ruling on what a woman is. And next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert from Don't Divide Us about whether the Equality Act is fit for purpose. A new report says no. Don't go anywhere.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
If it's heat you're after, then the Mediterranean is the place to be over this forthcoming week. We are going to be seeing temperatures climb over the next few days. Worth noting that heat could spark off a few showers and thunderstorms in places, but generally there will be plentiful amounts of sunshine for many of these countries if you are heading out. The peak of the heat likely to be on Wednesday at this point, for inland areas in particular, seeing 35 to 40 degrees Celsius.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. As we transition into a new week, there will often be quite settled conditions around for many of us, and even out there at the moment it is relatively calm. Plenty of clear spells and dry conditions for the vast majority, a few mist and fog patches. The same can't be said for Western Scotland, though, where rain will be arriving during the second half of the night. This could turn heavy over the hills for a time. Temperatures, though, will be holding up in double-digit figures for many of us as we start off Monday morning. We do, though, have that rain in play for the far north and west of Scotland first thing on Monday. The heaviest pulses will be in the early hours, and it will tend to ease as we head throughout the day, but still fairly damp and grey to come here, and quite a brisk breeze around the coasts and hills as well. Some of that rain could just flirt with the far west of Northern Ireland, but parts of County Down probably seeing a decent amount of sunny spells, and the bulk of England and Wales will also see some sunshine pretty much from the word go on Monday morning, and that will continue throughout the day. There'll be some fair weather cloud bubbling up in places that might make the sunshine hazy at times, particularly for southern areas of England, but it will stay dry, fine and pleasant. Temperatures will also be up tomorrow compared to the values we've seen around today, so more widely across central eastern areas, seeing the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. Even 20 degrees, 22 for parts of Northern Ireland, central and eastern Scotland, more around mid-teens for the far northwest. And that's because we see another weather front pushing its way in as we move overnight into the start of Tuesday. This could bring some stronger winds first thing in the morning, potentially close to gale strength around the far north of Scotland. And there'll also be this band slowly slipping its way south-eastwards. That rain will tend to weaken throughout the day, and there'll be some sunny spells developing behind that, but the most prolonged sunshine right throughout Tuesday will again be down towards the southeast. But the sunshine looks like it will develop more widely across all areas of the UK as we head towards the middle of the week, and those temperatures are also going to be climbing. Bye-bye.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So is the Equality Act broken? Well, a new report from the campaign group Don't Divide Us has examined over 5,000 employment tribunal cases involving claims of race discrimination, either as the main issue or a contributing factor. And the report argues that the Equality Act may actually be fueling serious problems in the workplace. So I'm joined now by coordinator of Don't Divide Us, Dr. Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert. Alka, welcome to the show. So firstly, tell us about your report.
Yep, it's a report that in which we've audited, as you said, over 5,000 employment tribunal hearing cases. There's also a section dealing with the historical and the jurisprudence, the historical development and the jurisprudence of the Equality Act, because it's often presented as just a technical bundling up of anti-discrimination legislation that existed before. And that's how Harriet Harman presented it in 2010. But actually, it's very different. It's a different beast.
Well, of course, a lot of people would say, but surely, you know, you shouldn't be able to discriminate in the workplace on the basis of skin colour. So why is the Equality Act a problem?
Well, I mean, you have to first of all, just, you know, don't take the label for granted, right? We're not talking about the protections against discrimination on, you know, which will affect dismissal, promotion, hiring, etc. All of those protections were there before the Equality Act, right? In the similar case in the gender debate, you know, the single-sex toilets was not in the Equality Act, it was in the health and safety regulations. Yes. So there is existing legislation which protects workers as employees from concrete objective acts of discrimination. And obviously we are totally for that, we're not against that. The Equality Act bundled them up, that's true, technically, but it also overlaid the whole legislation through a kind of cultural gloss, and that was mainly through the public sector equality duty, and then incorporating harassment, that has just given the Equality Act legs to be virtually limitless in what it covers. and who it covers. And in fact, your earlier item with the football fan was saying, well, under equalities protection, you can't. And you can see how it really restricts.
Well, it seems as though a lot of people will have recourse to the Equality Act and say that they've been discriminated against because they have perceived something to have been motivated by hatred or prejudice against a protected characteristic. That can be weaponised, can't it?
Yes, it can. I mean, first of all, just some numbers just to give you... I think people really need to know the scope of this, because when we started the report, I thought, oh, you know, maybe a week or two, a few hundred cases, it will be done and dusted in 2 months' time. Since 2017 to 2024, the number of employment tribunal cases is over 200,000. Right now, they're not all equalities. You know, some of those might be just straightforward work. You know, constructive dismissal, things like that. However, we sampled for the the cases that were brought under race discrimination, which were over 5,000, out of which 281, that's 5%, were upheld. So either, as Rod Liddell says, the employment judiciary is being run by the Ku Klux Klan,
yes,
or he puts it that, you know, there are grifters at work, and we do find examples of that, but the much bigger proportion of them, because we also do a qualitative analysis of the hearing records, so you can see how people are thinking, how people are experiencing their workplace relationships, and what you see is something. It's not really grift. But it is a kind of people just see themselves in terms of protected characteristics. That makes them very defensive.
Yes.
And when you're defensive, you tend to go on the attack and you're very prone to things. And really now what we're getting is that is now leading to segregation. And we see it in the kind of positive act that's written in through positive action, by the way, explicitly. But you can see it, you know, you can see it in Cambridge and Oxford with some of their recruitment policies, which are just for, you know, ethnic minorities. But, I mean, it's not just academia and it's not just, you know, big institutions. It's like every single workplace, every single service and provider is covered by the Equality Act. So basically, once you walk out your front door, anywhere you go.
So to sort of sum up, I mean, are you suggesting that what we need to do is perhaps to try and see us as colleagues and friends and human beings, first and foremost, as that, but not through these identity characteristics that are enshrined?
I mean, absolutely. You know, you've got to remember the progress that Britain has made in terms of race relations from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to the 2000s has been done without the Equality Act.
Yes.
Right? And since the Equality Act, have we seen greater harmony in society or the workplaces? No, we haven't. We've seen increasing fractiousness. So it is doing something very, very corrosive. We've just looked at race. There are obviously other categories that we're calling for a legal review of it to see what protections we want that already exist in other law, what protections, if any, the Equality Act provides that we may want to keep, if any. This needs to be done. It's a matter of democratic accountability. This has not been... There's been no post-legislative scrutiny of this. That's up to a government to do. Clearly, Labour aren't going to do it because they want to bring in a new Race Equality Act, which will make things even worse. So it's up to all the other parties to take this on board.
So it's time for a reckoning. Very interesting. Alka, before you go, can you just tell us where can people find out more about this campaign to scrutinise the Act properly?
Well, this is the report. There are hard copies. It's also on our website, don'tdivideus.com. We have had a fantastic response to the report and would really like to take it further. We know governments don't tend to do anything unless there's pressure. If you'd like to help us do that, please check out our website and consider supporting us. You can by becoming a subscriber or donating.
Fantastic. Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So, a government spokesperson has replied, saying the UK has a long-standing history of tackling all forms of discrimination and harassment. We are proud of the Equality Act 2010 and the rights and protections it affords individuals of all backgrounds and will continue to uphold its provisions. So next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by journalist Helen Joyce, who will take us through all the groups that are ignoring the Supreme Court ruling on what constitutes a woman. Don't go anywhere.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. In April, the Supreme Court ruled that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological sex, not gender identity. And this clarifies that gender recognition certificates do not change someone's legal sex for the purpose of single-sex services. But many groups and organisations still seem to be ignoring this landmark ruling. So I'm joined now to discuss this by the journalist and director of advocacy at Sex Matters, Helen Joyce. Helen, welcome to the show. I want to start by asking you about this ruling. Back in April, we have clarification about what the Equality Act actually means. So, all presumably is well and good now, is that right?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, it was really a masterpiece of clarity, 88 pages of cool, calm prose in which the judges didn't just say unanimously that in the Equality Act, sex means sex, not paperwork. They also explained why, with the principles behind that, and they spelled out what it meant for single-sex spaces, for sports, for services, and so on. And you'd think that we could just sort of go home now, wouldn't you? But it turns out that a lot of people who don't like the ruling are pretending they don't understand the ruling, which is obviously a different matter. And 2 months later, we're watching, incredibly, a lot of organisations, including, for example, the Houses of Parliament, saying that they are not going to do anything about rules that said that men can go into women's spaces until they're told they have to do it by the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And not just them, but, you know, teachers' unions, hospitals, police forces, employers all over the country, let's see who else, universities, all of them pretending that either this doesn't apply to them or it's too confusing or that they need further guidance. But the law is the law. It's extraordinary to live in a nation where people just ignore the law when it doesn't suit them.
Now, Helen, I want to ask about this because, you know, I'm not a legal mind, but even I understood what the Supreme Court said. It seemed absolutely clear to me. Why would I need to wait for guidance from the EHRC to simply reiterate what has been so candidly expressed?
Because you didn't want what was so candidly expressed is the only possible reason. The Supreme Court is literally the highest legal authority in the land. What the Supreme Court says goes, and not only does it go the second they say it, it actually tells us what the interpretation should have been since 2010. So any organisation that misunderstood the law before, and to be honest, a lot did, the Scottish Government, the UK Government and the Equality and Human Rights Commission all thought that what sex meant in the Equality Act was paperwork, so that if someone had a gender recognition certificate, they in effect changed sex for the purposes of the Equality Act. They did think that, and organisations that set policies based on that had a reason for doing so. But the second the Supreme Court spoke, that was no longer true. It had never been true. And to be in legal compliance, you really have to move with all possible haste to get your policies in line. And yet everybody's pretending that some pre-existing work that the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, is doing to update its code of practice for service providers has to be waited for. But that you know, people like the police forces and governments and employers, who else? Like lots, you know, it's only service provision that this is about. It's not about employment.
So can you give us some...
Really, there's no reason.
Can you give us some specific examples of organisations that are ignoring this ruling?
Oh, well, I can tell you the House of Commons and the House of Lords are. They were asked, would they update their guidance, which says that you should be able to use single-sex spaces according to which ones you prefer. And they said that they wouldn't until the EHRC brought out its guidance. The Houses of Parliament said that. And then on Wednesday, there was a meeting of the Women and Equalities Select Committee to grill the boss of the EHRC, the chair, Baroness Kishore Faulkner, and a trans-identifying barrister, Robin Moira-White, attended, and he went to the women's toilets and was asked to leave by two women who were also in attendance. And they called a member of staff, and the member of staff said no, that they wouldn't ask a trans-identifying man to leave the women's toilets. He said the person apparently said, we don't do that here. And they have now apologised and recognised that they need to retrain their staff. But we had already asked them, would they please update their guidance? And they had said no, that they were going to wait.
And what about schools as well? Because my understanding is the National Education Union has put out some very misleading information about this as well.
Well, it came up at their conference, I think, certainly at a meeting or at a conference, and they said that trans-identifying teachers should be allowed to continue to use the opposite sex's toilets. I mean, I presume that they also think this for students, but I mean, none of this is now lawful. I mean, it's astonishing that everybody is saying it's very confusing, that it's too hard to implement. I mean, what they're saying there, in effect, is that trans people can't be trusted to follow the rules. Everybody knows what sex they are. If they're told that if you're male, don't go into female-only spaces, everybody who's male knows that fact. Even if they no longer identify as male, they know that they really are. So they shouldn't go in. So this is just it's an incredible backhanded sort of insult to trans people that they can't be trusted to follow rules that are there for everybody's safety and well-being.
Yes, because one of the constant arguments I hear is that, well, this is impossible to police. How are you going to police this? But isn't the responsibility on each individual to make the choice in a court not to break the law, in other words?
Well, especially for somebody like a barrister like Robin Moira-White. I mean, it's not like he can say he doesn't understand the law, is it? Yes, it's a bit like speed limits. We do enforce speed limits, but we do it by spot checks. And, you know, the fact is that if it's 4 a.m. and it's a country road, you know you're going to get away with it if you break the speed limit. Doesn't mean we say, oh, we can't have speed limits. It's a bit like that. We don't need toilet police. Everybody knows what sex they are. Everybody can see the signs. If you're not able to read or you're from abroad and you don't understand the words male or female, you know what the pictograms are. And you know you shouldn't go into somewhere that's not for your sex. And increasingly, there are excellent unisex options. So, for example, in Portcullis House, where that meeting was on Wednesday, the room that the meeting was in, it's precisely the same distance from the women's toilets, the men's toilets, and a unisex accessible option. So Robin had the choice of all of them. He could have gone to the men's or he could have gone to the unisex one, but he chose to go into the women's.
So why has this happened, Helen? Can I ask, because I know that for a number of years now, Stonewall and other groups like Stonewall have been accused of representing the law as they would like it to be, not as it actually is. That's a quotation from Akua Reindorf there. Do you think that it's been the influence of campaign groups such as Stonewall misrepresenting the Equality Act that this has just stuck now and people have trusted activists all along?
I think that's correct, and I also think that people are afraid to change the rules because they know that trans people have been very much misled about their legal rights. Trans people have been told themselves that they have the right to go into whichever space they want and that anyone who says they can't must be a bigot. So they know they're going to be disappointing quite a lot of people who include some, quite violent people. As Baroness Kishore-Falconer said on Wednesday, she said, she has been personally threatened, her staff have been threatened, the EHRC's offices have had a deeply unpleasant protests outside them, including somebody pouring urine all around the door. So, you know which side, as she said, you know which side is going to be unpleasant. The women who've been campaigning for single-sex spaces to mean genuinely single-sex have been polite, organised, have done so within the law. We sought to get the law clarified and we succeeded. But there are some people, a minority, but some people on the other side who have been violent, who have been quite aggressive and disgusting in online and in person. And I think a lot of people are quite cowardly about this. They're all waiting for somebody else to jump. They're waiting to be taken to court or waiting to be told what to do in terms that a 5-year-old understands by the EHRC.
And we should say, of course, that your organisation, Sex Matters, has been instrumental in this, and also For Women Scotland, who took the case against the Scottish Parliament in order to clarify the law. But finally, Helen, can I ask you, all of these organisations and sometimes charities, they're posting online their intention to break the law. Isn't that a rather silly thing to do?
Absolutely. I mean, people like the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, and the Charity Commission, in my opinion, should already be acting when charities and employers say that they're going to break the law. But I can assure people that we will continue to take people to court if they break the law. We will, we've already worked out some people that we think that we need to talk to who have been major, like, for example, Kenwood Ladies Pond, the Hampstead Women's Pond. They continue to say that men who identify as women should be allowed to use the ladies' pond. And remember, there are 3 ponds there. There's a men's pond, a women's pond, and a mixed pond. So everyone has somewhere to go. And yet they're still saying that they're going to allow men into the ladies. Anyone who's doing this can expect the wrong side of a legal action, frankly.
OK, well, it sounds like it's going to have to be lawfare all the way, probably. Helen Joyce, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. That was Helen Joyce from Sex Matters. So the House of Commons have now apologised in an email to both Ms Harris and Ms Binning after allowing a trans-identified male to use female-only lavatories. The House of Commons also said, "We continue to act in full compliance with the law as set out in the Supreme Court's judgment, and we remain committed to treating all those who work in or visit Parliament with respect, providing support to colleagues where needed." In the Hampstead Ponds case, a spokesperson for the City of London Corporation said, "These accusations are completely false. The City Corporation is compliant with existing UK law. In line with other affected organisations, we are carefully considering the judgment and awaiting statutory guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which service providers must take into account." And Daniel Kabadi from the General Secretary of the NEU said the guidance from the EHRC is wholly lacking. "We have written to the Secretary of State for Education and have made it clear there is urgent need for information, advice and support for schools and colleges." So that's the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but please don't go anywhere.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. As we transition into a new week, there will often be quite settled conditions around for many of us, and even out there at the moment it is relatively calm. Plenty of clear spells and dry conditions for the vast majority, a few mist and fog patches. The same can't be said for Western Scotland, though, where rain will be arriving during the second half of the night. This could turn heavy over the hills for a time. Temperatures, though, will be holding up in double-digit figures for many of us as we start off Monday morning. We do, though, have that rain in play for the far north and west of Scotland first thing on Monday. The heaviest pulses will be in the early hours, and it will tend to ease as we head throughout the day, but still fairly damp and grey to come here, and quite a brisk breeze around the coasts and hills as well. Some of that rain could just flirt with the far west of Northern Ireland, but parts of County Down probably seeing a decent amount of sunny spells, and the bulk of England and Wales will also see some sunshine pretty much from the word go on Monday morning, and that will continue throughout the day. There'll be some fair weather cloud bubbling up in places that might make the sunshine hazy at times, particularly for southern areas of England, but it will stay dry, fine and pleasant. Temperatures will also be up tomorrow compared to the values we've seen around today, so more widely across central eastern areas, seeing the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. Even 20 degrees, 22 for parts of Northern Ireland, central and eastern Scotland, more around mid-teens for the far northwest. And that's because we see another weather front pushing its way in as we move overnight into the start of Tuesday. This could bring some stronger winds first thing in the morning, potentially close to gale strength around the far north of Scotland. And there'll also be this band slowly slipping its way south-eastwards. That rain will tend to weaken throughout the day, and there'll be some sunny spells developing behind that, but the most prolonged sunshine right throughout Tuesday will again be down towards the southeast. But the sunshine looks like it will develop more widely across all areas of the UK as we head towards the middle of the week, and those temperatures are also going to be climbing. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 8 p.m. I'm Andrew Doyle. This is Free Speech Nation. Tonight on the show.
Don't come back! You're banned!
Will a new government bill ban banter in pubs? We're going to be discussing that with free speech campaigner Toby Young. And RIP Pride. It seems it might be the end of the LGBTQIA+ event. And what's happening here?
This is a public broadcast apology direct from Channel 4.
OK, we're going to find out what that's all about in just a moment. But first, here's the news with Bethany Elsey.
Andrew, thank you. Here's your top stories from the GB newsroom at 8 p.m. For a third consecutive day, Iran and Israel are continuing to exchange ballistic missiles. Those are the latest pictures of missiles reportedly hitting the port city of Haifa in northern Israel. It's understood many others were intercepted. Well, GB News Home and Security editor Mark White joins me now with the latest. Look, Mark, at least 10 people have been killed and 140 injured in Israel. But in Iran, about 138 people have been killed. After these latest attacks, you know, the casualties could be many more.
Yes, there's no doubt it's very destructive on both sides. In Israel now, the all clear has been sounded, but no one in the region believes that will be the last of the missiles launched from Iran this evening. They're getting used to this now familiar pattern. I want to show you some of the images over the skies over central Tel Aviv and over central Israel this evening. You can see there the launches, and some of those are from the THAAD launchers, the Arrow system that goes high up into the atmosphere, actually into space. It's called an exo-atmospheric detonation. You can see the pulses from the detonations that are taking place in space just before these ballistic missiles turn and come back down into the atmosphere on the final termination phase of their journey to the ground itself. We know that there have been those impacts, an impact in the northern port city of Haifa. That image there you can see, well, that's more of the space launches over central Israel this time. We don't know how many missiles were actually launched on this occasion, just another volley of ballistic missiles that were sent over towards Israel, streaking down, some of them intercepted and some of them not, heading down to the ground. Now look at this image as this missile comes down, a direct hit on the port city of Haifa, and we can show you the ground shots, incredible images coming through of firefighters dealing with the aftermath of these missiles and parts of missiles coming down, and you can see that has engulfed cars and also nearby buildings damaged by the impact of the blast. There's shrapnel all around as well. It has to be hoped that the Israeli people in that area, of course well used to these alerts now, have gone to a place of shelter away from the worst of that inferno and that explosion that happened in the last hour. So more images that we can show you of the firefighting from Haifa there as well. Really shows the ferocity of the blaze that has taken hold. This is southern Israel now, where another missile has come down in a community. You can see damage to the buildings there in that community, and a familiar scene, firefighters working in a dangerous zone, because you just never know when there might be other missile strikes. They're obviously checking for potential victims here. But as I say, the all clear has been given for the moment, but we are braced for the potential of more waves of attacks from Iran over Israel this evening.
Mark, thank you. Mark White, our Home and Security editor, on the latest conflict between Israel and Iran. I'm Bethany Elsey. I'll have more news for you in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, and my lovely comedian panellists Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Well, let's not waste them. Let's get some questions from our audience. We've got Clive. Clive.
Why did it take Labour so long to greenlight a grooming gangs inquiry?
Yeah, so this is the major story today, the major U-turn. Prime Minister Leo is now saying, actually, the grooming gangs national inquiry is needed, whereas before he was saying that anyone suggesting that was jumping on a bandwagon of the far right. Is he now jumping on a bandwagon of the far right?
Well, some of his recent comments suggest that he is jumping on a bandwagon of the far right, and it's nice to have him on board. But no, I mean, when Keir Starmer said, announced that there was going to be a national grooming gang inquiry, he said he'd read all 200 pages of the report. I can't remember, who was it?
Baroness Casey.
Baroness Casey report.
Yeah.
So he'd read all 200 pages, and it was like he'd suddenly realised. I think he genuinely did just read. I think before this, he was just getting his news from The Guardian, and it was just saying, no, anybody who says, children getting gang raped and murdered is bad is a massive racist. So he was like, they must be racist, and we can make this problem go away by calling everybody racist. It's actually a testament to how non-racist British people are that you can rape thousands of their children before they even start getting a tiny little bit racist.
There is an issue here, isn't there, that Keir Starmer does seem to do things unthinkingly. He took the knee, not realising what it was that Black Lives Matter really stood for and meant. He got on board with gender identity ideology, having not sat down with Rosie Duffield, who was driven out of his party because of this issue. It's like he just makes the call and then reads about it and then says, oh, actually, maybe I need to go to that side.
Yeah, he's the sort of politician. Sometimes I wish he was a bit more of a conviction politician. Margaret Thatcher, you knew what she stood for. You might not agree with her, but she had that resolute strength and direction inside her. Whereas, Keir Starmer just flip-flops. He can't buy a pair of shoes without consulting a focus group. Yeah. Everything is just completely steered by whatever the latest poll is saying.
So, Steve, this is a major issue, isn't it? Because for me, it was always a bit of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't they call for a national grooming gang scandal, given the level of outrage in the country? Surely it would have always been a win for Labour. Why push back on that?
But what you're missing is the way that Labour likes to do things at the moment. When they have an issue like this, they think, OK, what would be the best way that we could maximise political reputational damage before eventually flipping and doing the thing that people want when there's no points to be scored at that stage? This is the best way to lose both sides of the argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyone that you spend all this time calling people far right and then agree with those people so you can upset whoever's left on the left so that no one likes it. It's genius.
Well, some people have started saying that Keir Starmer's starting to sound a lot like Enoch Powell, right?
Because the Island of Strangers.
Because the Island of Strangers comment.
Yeah. Well, they do say you get more right-wing as you get older. Did he have a birthday? He's had a big birthday recently.
Is it just that Labour and Starmer knows how unpopular they are now? They're thinking, let's just troll people and go as badly as possible. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I genuinely think a lot of people on the left just didn't know. But I'm seeing a sort of vibe shift. I've seen even sort of, people who'd be seen as left-wing commentators like Eva Santina, coming out and speaking out against the grooming gangs. Whereas, until now, it's been sort of verboten for anybody on the left to acknowledge that it existed or it was bad.
It's so strange, isn't it? Because, I mean, the journalist who first broke the story was Julie Bindel, a left-wing writer. Yeah. She was warned off it, by her editor, saying don't go near it because it might look racist. The J report revealed that, we've had people in social work, we've had police saying that they wouldn't go near it or investigate properly because of perceptions they might be racist. Yeah. Are we over that hill now? Have we just reached the point where the accusation of racism won't silence people anymore? Because I think we need to get to that point, don't we?
I don't know if we're fully over the hill. At least we're at the top of the hill and have better vantage point now.
Right.
I think we do need to have the inquiry to look at these issues so we can actually address and go look at the problem that was caused by the fear of racism. It's possible to have two thoughts in your head at the same time, that two things are bad. You don't just have to work out which one's worse and the other one is therefore a good thing.
Exactly.
You can think racism is bad. You can think raping children is bad. It is possible to hold those thoughts in your head and still move forward.
And as Julie Bindel said in her latest Spectator piece, that it's very important that they do look at ethnicity, they do look at the data, that it is robust and that it is fearless. Yeah. But I'm not so sure they'll do that, but we'll see. Let's move on. Let's get another question now. This question comes from, is it William? William? Hello.
My question is, does Parliament need to stop backdoor blasphemy laws?
Yeah, this has been an interesting one this week because, of course, as you know, we've had the case of Hamid Koskan, who was convicted for burning his own copy of the Quran. And we've had this week now Nick Timothy, who's the MP for West Suffolk. He stood up in Parliament. He's introduced this new bill, which is precisely aimed at this point of protecting freedom of expression, of saying we can't have these blasphemy laws coming in by the back door. I mean, the Crown Prosecution Service and the judiciary are saying this is not a blasphemy law. But it kind of is, isn't it? I mean, if you're arrested and convicted for burning a holy book, yeah, it sounds like a blasphemy law to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's this myth that the police and our criminal justice system are there to, enforce principles, and they're not. They're there to keep the peace. So the reason that was given for that Koskan guy who burnt the Quran, the reason that was given for him as proof that he'd, blasphemed and caused some, terrible public disorder was the fact that somebody was trying to stab him, and that just legitimizes people trying to stab people who've burnt the Quran. And those people who are stabbing people don't need any more encouragement from the state. They don't need to be, told, oh, this is how you bring in your blasphemy laws. You try and stab people.
That to me was the most astonishing thing about the case, the idea that we're proving that you are causing disorder because someone stabbed you. That's the ultimate form of victim blaming, isn't it? It's crazy.
And also, by that logic, tennis is at fault for Monica Seles being stabbed. I'm not sure. Somehow she was the terrorist in that situation.
It's absolutely crazy. We do, by the way, have a short clip, I think, of Nick Timothy speaking in Parliament. Can we have a look at that?
I respect the religious beliefs of others, but I do not mind if Mohammed is satirised, criticised or mocked. I'm not a Muslim, and I choose not to live by the moral codes set out by Islam. I'm a Christian, and I should make clear that I don't think anybody should be prosecuted for satirising, criticising or mocking Jesus either.
But are we going to learn? I mean, what do you think, Steve? I mean, are we going to sort of take a stand on this? Because the truth is, as we know, if you do target a certain religion, there are actual risks, aren't there? If you do mock.
Yeah, and that's how this system seems to work, by saying, oh, I'm so offended that I'm driven to violence and some stabbing that we better shut down the people who are offending me. No, I mean, look, I'm coming at this from a different point of view. As an atheist, I think all religions should be mockable because it's just a thing that's in your head. If you're offended by a thing I say about your religion, that only exists within your head.
Yes.
So how does the rest of the world have to make up for it?
Well, exactly. And one of the things that really disturbed me about this case, because, as I say, I think it is a blasphemy law de facto. It's just a way of forcing it through. And we sort of know this because the Crown Prosecution Service, when they charged this man, Hamid Koskan, initially, they said that they were charging him with attempting to cause distress or alarm to the institution of Islam. Not to Muslims, to the institution of Islam. Now, what they've done there is made up a law that doesn't exist. That's the Crown Prosecution Service. They were forced then to rewrite it, because they're not empowered to just make up their own blasphemy laws. So isn't that kind of disturbing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's horrifically disturbing. And also, it's sort of going in the wrong direction. This is just going to, foment more resentment amongst the sort of, the dwindling native British majority and, foment the sort of conflict that's emerging between different groups in this country. And long term, I mean, I think it's all just shuffling the deck chairs because, I mean, the demographics show that, Islam is going to be an increasingly larger force. I mean, I think it's increased something ridiculous, almost close to doubling over the last decade. So if that continues for a couple more decades, I mean, you're definitely going to be having Islamic blasphemy laws are going to be the least of your worries. You're going to be stoned to death for a variety of things.
Well, there's Leo with his cheery prognostication.
Steve, for a bit of balance, I'd like to say that Shintoism is just silly. There you go.
There we go. Well done, Steve. You're a real blaspheming rebel. Anyway, let's move on now. We've got a question from Chris. Chris.
Do trigger warnings need trigger warnings?
Do trigger warnings need a trigger warning? That sounds like a ridiculous question. But actually, Chris makes a good point because there was this week, this group of museums had a manual. They issued a manual about trigger warnings, which had a trigger warning. And this was the trigger toolkit. But this wasn't the first time. So I remember a number of years ago, there was a feminist website that had a trigger warning on their definition of trigger warning because they said that the word trigger connoted guns and that could upset people. And I really wish I was making that up as a joke, but it's genuinely true. So, I mean, are we not, I mean, I asked this earlier of Steve, are we not over the hill yet? Are we not past this point where we can just tell people to grow the hell up?
Yeah. I mean, this is where, you really want the Iran-Israel war to escalate and drag in the whole of Europe just so these people get to, get shot at for real in real life. And then, maybe when they come back, missing some limbs, they'll and some friends, they'll be like, oh, well, you know what, maybe this word in a book wasn't so problematic.
I mean, it's not the case, is it, that people are genuinely upset by these words? I mean, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust just put a trigger warning on their collection because they said Shakespeare had some attitudes that are racist and homophobic, which is surprising because Shakespeare wrote 126 gay love sonnets to another man. Doesn't matter, apparently he's a homophobe. But do people really need these trigger warnings? Are we really that sensitive, Steve?
No, I'm surely... the amount of people who would be offended by it so small, they could Google it themselves and see what's in it. If you're that bothered by the content, because they're called content warnings or something like that, aren't they? That way you're not using the word trigger. My favourite one was some performance of The Sound of Music had one in it, because it includes, you know, Nazis and scenes of Nazis and the sources of Nazis. But it also included has moments of music. It's a musical. It's called The Sound of Music. And you're upset that there might be some music in it in case it's too much for you.
Yeah, well, there was a trigger warning on Julius Caesar saying that there was a stabbing in it.
Oh, don't ruin it for me.
I think people know about that. Or the best one was the trigger warning at that university about the old man and the sea, the Hemingway, and it said it contains scenes of graphic fishing. so be careful. But yes, apparently the Nazis, they're the bad guys in The Sound of Music.
Are they?
Wouldn't really work without it. Yeah, it's not the kids in the curtains, is it? Anyway, the Museum Development North, who were the ones who issued the trigger warning toolkit, they've been approached for comment, but we haven't had a comment back. They're probably too frightened or something. I don't know. Anyway, coming up, I'm going to be joined by the director of the Free Speech Union, Lord Toby Young. But next on Free Speech Nation, with support for Pride UK starting to slip, could we be witnessing the end of Pride as we know it? Don't go anywhere.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think that things have gone a little bit too far in this country. The fact of the matter is that any well-trained journalist does know that free speech does have to exist in a certain environment where you can't be defamatory and you can't incite racial hatred or violence. We know that because we're trained to recognise it. But what's happened here in this country is we've chucked the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
What's happened now is that everyone is starting to react to fairly, not innocent phrases exactly, but we're starting to become really obsessive about things that don't actually matter and people should be allowed to speak about. Lucy Connolly's she's a case in point. If you think that the actual Prime Minister now is leading the charge, along with Shabnam Mahmood, to actually shorten jail sentences or have no jail sentences for some criminals, and yet Lucy Connolly is in prison for 31 months and loses her appeal, you've got to start asking yourself, what is going on here?
And also, can I just add, Paul Richards, Keir Starmer asked about Lucy Connolly. He says, oh, sorry, I'm not across the case. Come on, pull the other leg. By the way, I don't want to just talk about Lucy Connolly. This is free speech in Britain. Free speech, in my book, does not exist in Britain.
Well, technically, you're right, of course, because we can't just say whatever we like. We can't walk into a crowded theatre and shout fire, right? And I can't say so-and-so's a paedophile or so-and-so's a terrorist without, you know, there being some evidence for that. We can't just say whatever we like anywhere we like. We have boundaries and rules. And you know, I would say to the Americans coming over and lecturing us on how to run the place, you know, they display total ignorance of our system so often. If you vox pop American citizens, they don't know where England is. They think our Prime Minister is King Charles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, is this the beginning of the end for gay pride? This year, Pride UK has banned all political parties from taking part, a move which is seen by some as a punishment for their support of a recent Supreme Court ruling. And across the West, Pride events are losing major corporate sponsors. Here in the UK, Plymouth Pride was nearly cancelled due to a lack of funding. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by the director of the Gay Men's Network, Dennis Kavanagh. Welcome back to the show, Dennis. Thank you. Hi. So the Supreme Court ruling that I alluded to there is the one that confirms that sex in the Equality Act means biological sex. Isn't there a case for saying that Pride and gay rights groups should actually be celebrating that rather than punishing the political parties for supporting it?
Absolutely they should. How many Supreme Court cases do you get where there's a set of lesbian interveners arguing the case for gay rights, which is what happened at the Four Women Scotland case? This judgment protected the existence existentially of homosexuality in the Equality Act. Paragraph 206 of the Supreme Court judgment, the law lords say, if this had gone the other way and the protected characteristic was splintered, the protected characteristic for homosexuality would be rendered meaningless. As J.K. Rowling said, without sex, there's no same-sex attraction. So we came this close in this country to having a meaningless characteristic protecting gay people. The lesbian interveners also protected the gay right to single-sex associations. That's a right that lesbians don't have in Australia, where currently it's illegal for Australian lesbians to meet in a pride centre and it just be lesbians.
So doesn't that just make the case absolutely clear that the LGB and the TQIA+, that those are actually completely, not just separate, but actually antagonistic to each other?
Yeah, they have completely competing agendas. If the Scottish Government had won, Andrew, the position in law would be that to be a lesbian would mean that you were attracted either to someone of the same sex or to a certificate. And as the law lords said, well, look, lesbians, gay men, they're not attracted to certificates.
Yeah.
This was a dystopian and a nightmarish prospectus. The Scottish Government could have destroyed gay rights in this country. They could have destroyed us in law. They could have destroyed our association rights. And what are the guys in Pride doing? They should be out celebrating the lesbian interveners, but instead they're stamping their feet, throwing tantrums, as you said. They're saying to politicians, you can't come to our marches anymore, and they're falling out with people like Barclays.
So, yeah, well, that's a good example. The Pride Liverpool had been sponsored by Barclays. Barclays said, well, actually, we need to uphold the law. You know, that's quite important as a bank. You know, they don't want to get sued. I mean, isn't that the case there? They just withdrew their money because these group of activists at Pride were expecting them to break the law on their behalf. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Pride Liverpool issued a statement stamping their feet saying, well, because Barclays Bank is going to enforce spaces for women to ensure their privacy, dignity and safety and follow the law in this country, yes. Because they did that, we're going to stamp our feet and we're going to end our relationship with them. Well,
doesn't that mean they lose all their money?
Well, it seems so.
They've had to cancel.
Yeah,
right?
A few weeks later, they issued a statement saying, well, you know, this is meant in part, this is one of the reasons we've had to cancel. Talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. But, you know, this lot, we're always going to bite the hand that feeds them. They're far too used to being indulged. They're far too used to corporations buckling. I suspect what they wanted was for Barclays to buckle.
Yes.
But these people aren't used to the real world. They're not used to a major financial institution that's got insurers, that's got a general counsel, who no doubt said these demands are ludicrous. And let's be clear, the political prospectus of modern Pride is ludicrous because it's asking politicians and companies to abandon the rule of law. That's insane.
So a lot of people are still confused about this because Pride claims to be a pro-gay rights movement. But, of course, it used to be. Yeah. And what it is now is it's a pro-gender identity ideology movement. And that ideology is the reason why so many young gay adolescents have been medicalised on the NHS for not conforming to old-fashioned stereotypes. It's the reason, as you say, why the notion of being same-sex attracted in law has been undermined by all sorts of groups. So how do we get across this point that Pride now is actually an anti-gay movement?
I think that message is getting across. It feels like the beginning of the end to me with Pride. You see far fewer companies changing their logos this year. You've got the advent of Trump, you've got the Supreme Court reality check, but I think Leo a minute ago called it pride fatigue. I think people are beginning to wake up to this. Let's be clear, we've lived through a generational international crime of gender medicine. As you and I have spoken about before, 80 to 90% of the children at NHS gender services were gay or lesbian or bisexual. This was chemical and surgical conversion therapy for young gays. And, you know, the fact the Pride movement had nothing to say about that, has nothing to say about the lesbians at the Supreme Court. The fact it's this irrelevant, pointless gender ideology party, I suspect, is one of the reasons that it feels like the beginning of the end. It feels like this movement is dying. But the fact that it didn't just abandon its post, as I wrote in Spiked this week, it joined the opposition opposition forces and cheered on, as I say, this generational crime of gender medicine. Frankly, it deserves to wither away, in my view.
But we've also seen Fred Sargent, who was one of the co-organisers of the first ever Pride March in New York in 1970, and he's come out and said Pride is now anti-gay, it's anti our interests, it should be abolished, or gay people at least should have nothing to do with it. That's the argument he's making. Would you make that case to gay people as well? Because I know a lot of gay people still go out there and wave the flag that now symbolises their own destruction.
I think it's up to individual gay people to make the decision that they want. You'll remember the Get the L Out case.
Yes.
For example, this was Cardiff Pride, and it was a very brave group of lesbians some years ago who stood there with a sign basically saying that lesbians were lesbians. It was a bit ruder than that, but it was about female...
Yeah, we can use our imagination.
Yeah, female same-sex attraction. And look, I'm all for brave gay men and lesbians going there, and I know there's been examples of that today to try and reclaim it. If that's what you want to do, please do it. But, myself, it's not my preferred tactic because I feel that the thing is so indelibly coloured now by gender ideology. But if people can get it back, fair enough.
Is there a way back? I mean, we've got the gender ideology is really represented by the Progress Pride flag, which is distinct from the original rainbow flag, which just incorporated everyone anyway. It was all about unity. But now the Progress Pride flag is very different. It's got the added chevrons, it's got the symbols. So is there a case for going back to the old Pride, saying this is about gay rights first and foremost?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But part of me feels like this, Andrew. I feel like party's over, kids. I'm pretty sick of parades and whooping it up and parties when children have been chemically castrated by a movement that this lot did everything they could to cheer on.
Yes.
Part of me thinks that gay rights needs to say party's over and have a long, hard look at itself. As I say, we came very close in this country. In addition to that crime of gender medicine, we came very close to losing our status in law, to losing our rights of association. And what was the gay rights movement doing? It was out having a party.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, whereas in the old times, you know, many decades ago, gay rights was about fighting against people who were very clear they did not think that being gay was natural. They wanted it to be illegal. That was all very straightforward. But now the threat to gay rights is coming from a group that claims to be for gay rights.
Yeah.
That's what makes it complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, and it makes it complex to fight, and it makes it complex for people. You know, not everyone's got their head stuck in the gender debate. Not everyone... Lots of perfectly nice, decent, straight people look at the pride flag and think, I want to be a nice person, I want to support that. They're not aware of the deep schism this has caused, and they're not aware of, as you say, the existential incompatibility, the antagonism between gender ideology and gay rights, because it is absolutely there, I'm afraid. When you get to the point, as the CEO of Stonewall, former CEO Nancy Kelly did, of calling lesbians, quote, sexual racists, or her predecessor lying to a group of parents, saying if you don't give children puberty blockers, 50% of them will kill themselves. That was Ruth Hunt lying to parents.
And that was just absolutely not true.
Totally untrue, a wicked, wicked lie. Once you get to that point, once your organisation is so corrupted by gender ideology, frankly, you wonder what the way back is.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, Dennis Kavanagh, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey,
Thanks very much. So next up on Free Speech Nation, Director of the Free Speech Union will be here to tell us all about his new campaign against the UK government's Banter ban. Don't go anywhere.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
If it's heat you're after, then the Mediterranean is the place to be over this forthcoming week. We are going to be seeing temperatures climb over the next few days. Worth noting that heat could spark off a few showers and thunderstorms in places, but generally there will be plentiful amounts of sunshine for many of these countries if you are heading out. The peak of the heat likely to be on Wednesday at this point, with inland areas in particular seeing 35 to 40 degrees Celsius.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. As we transition into a new week, there will often be quite settled conditions around for many of us, and even out there at the moment it is relatively calm. Plenty of clear spells and dry conditions for the vast majority. A few mist and fog patches. The same can't be said for Western Scotland, though, where rain will be arriving during the second half of the night. This could turn heavy over the hills for a time. Temperatures, though, will be holding up in double-digit figures for many of us as we start off Monday morning. We do, though, have that rain in play for the far north and west of Scotland first thing on Monday. The heaviest pulses will be in the early hours, and it will tend to ease as we head throughout the day, but still fairly damp and grey to come here, and quite a brisk breeze around the coasts and hills as well. Some of that rain could just flirt with the far west of Northern Ireland, but parts of County Down probably seeing a decent amount of sunny spells, and the bulk of England and Wales will also see some sunshine pretty much from the word go on Monday morning, and that will continue throughout the day. There'll be some fair weather cloud bubbling up in places that might make the sunshine hazy at times, particularly for southern areas of England, but it will stay dry, fine and pleasant. Temperatures will also be up tomorrow compared to the values we've seen around today, so more widely across central eastern areas seeing the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. Even 20 degrees, 22 for parts of Northern Ireland, central and eastern Scotland, more around mid-teens for the far northwest. And that's because we see another weather front pushing its way in as we move overnight into the start of Tuesday. This could bring some stronger winds first thing in the morning, potentially close to gale strength around the far north of Scotland. And there'll also be this band slowly slipping its way southeastwards. That rain will tend to weaken throughout the day, and there'll be some sunny spells developing behind that, but the most prolonged sunshine right throughout Tuesday will again be down towards the southeast. But the sunshine looks like it will develop more widely across all areas of the UK as we head towards the middle of the week, and those temperatures are also going to be climbing. Bye-bye.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Campaigners have criticised Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner's employment rights bill, calling it a banter ban. Part of the proposed legislation would compel employers, for example pub landlords, to protect staff from overhearing opinions or jokes from third parties or customers that they may not particularly like. Labour insists the bill will not affect anyone's right to lawful free speech, but the Free Speech Union's director, Toby Young, has tabled a motion in the Lords blocking this and has led an online campaign against it. And I'm delighted to say that Toby Young joins me now. Welcome to the show. Thank you. So tell us a bit more about this proposed banter ban. It's meant to be targeting verbal harassment, yes?
Yes, it's an amendment to the Equality Act that is going to be made by the Employment Rights Bill, which will make employers liable for the harassment of their employees by third parties. Now, they're already liable for third-party sexual harassment, so we're not talking about that. We're talking about, as you say, verbal harassment. And the Employment Tribunal has defined harassment over the years. I mean, it's been an evolving bit of jurisprudence, but harassment now includes overheard conversation. So someone successfully sued their employer in the Employment Tribunal for not protecting them, not taking all reasonable steps to prevent them overhearing a conversation they found offensive by virtue of their protected characteristics. So within British law, harassment includes overhearing things. So if we extend employers' liability to third-party harassment, that means they'll have to stop. They'll have to take all reasonable steps to stop their employees overhearing conversations, remarks, expostulations that they might find offensive or upsetting by virtue of their protected characteristics.
But I hear offensive things in the pub all the time, you know. I mean, I can't go running off to the police about it.
You have to be an employee in order to sue the publican for not taking sufficient steps to protect you from being offended or upset in this way.
But what kind of steps could they possibly take? I mean, they can't seriously be expected to police what their customers speak about in their pub, can they?
Well, I mean, there is a kind of reasonableness constraint on what you can sue your employer for not protecting you from in the employment tribunal. But if you look at employment tribunals and the cases they've, you know, heard and the awards they've granted, I mean, that constraint doesn't seem to be in operation.
So let's give it a specific example. So if I were working in a pub and I had a real problem with gender-critical views and I heard a couple of women expressing the view that people can't change sex, what would I do then?
If you were an employee, if you were a pink-haired they-them working at
that's who I am in this scenario.
OK, yeah, easy to imagine.
Yes.
And you overheard, or you even saw, you know, a gender-critical customer wearing a woman equals adult human female T-shirt.
Yes.
I think you could legitimately complain to the publican that he hadn't taken sufficient steps to protect you from being harassed in this way, having to see this deeply offensive T-shirt, which you find upsetting and offensive by virtue of your protected characteristic, your transgender identity. Now, there'd be a kind of defence that the publican, if he was well-versed in equality law, could make. He could say, but hang on, having a GC belief and expressing that belief is also protected under the Equality Act. But to expect publicans to navigate this incredibly complex area of equality law, whilst, you know, desperately trying to kind of survive, given the rise in national insurance contributions, the rise in alcohol duty. I mean, according to the Campaign for Real Ale, pubs are going bust at the rate of 37 a week. So to impose this huge additional burden on them, all this red tape, to say you now have to protect your employees from overhearing conversations from customers who might well have had a few beers. I mean, it's just going to be the end of the British pub as we know it.
I mean, Labour would say that they're not trying to criminalise free speech or to crack down on free speech, but we know, don't we, that activists do weaponise laws of this kind to precisely these ends. So are Labour perhaps going to introduce some kind of modification to the bill to ensure that overheard speech is not covered, perhaps?
Well, I proposed several amendments in the House of Lords, and one of them was, could we exclude indirect harassment? So it can't include overheard conversations.
Yes.
You're just going to have to grin and bear it.
So that would solve it.
That would solve it, but that got pretty short shrift from the government benches. They essentially say whenever you try and modify this absurd, overreaching piece of legislation, they say, don't you care about people being harassed? Don't you care about people being racially abused? Don't you care about misogynistic speech, about barmaids having their bottoms pinched in buns? It's as though it's just binary. Either you protect vulnerable people from nasty, predatory, white working class men who've had too many lagers, or you're a free speech absolutist and anything goes. So there's no middle ground as far as they're concerned.
To be an ideology that is baked into the DNA of Labour at this point, that they don't trust words and they don't trust being offended. But isn't part of life that you're going to encounter offensive things from time to time?
Well, I had one conversation, Andrew, with the government minister whose job it is in the Lords to defend the banter ban. I said, what about in a football stadium? You know, if a partially sighted steward overhears a fan shouting at a referee or a linesman, "Are you blind?" And by the way, at QPR, that happens roughly once every 30 seconds. The partially sighted steward could sue the club for allowing someone to say that, which he finds deeply offensive by virtue of his protected characteristic, his partial sightedness. Not only could he sue, any other member of the club could sue on his behalf. You don't even have to have the protected characteristic to sue your employer for not taking all reasonable steps to protect employees who do have it. I mean, it's extraordinary. It'll be an absolute free-for-all for the oversensitive, the snowflakes on staff in football grounds. And I said this to the minister, and she said, well, at Brighton, they already have... I'm a fan of Brighton and Hove, of course.
Yeah.
And we have lots of rules about tragedy chanting, and you can't shout Chelsea rent boys, and I think that's a good thing. So you think that fans ought to be thrown out, do you, if they say, "Are you blind?" to a linesman? And she didn't really answer, but I think that is her view.
Okay,
she does think that people shouldn't be saying that kind of thing in football stadiums. Wouldn't say it at Brighton and Hove.
Well,
I bet they do, actually. But, yeah.
There's a lot of things that don't go on in Brighton, but it's sort of an enclave that isn't part of the real world. What do we do, though, about the issue of performers in clubs? I mean, I speak as a comedian.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fringe comedy venues are pubs.
Yeah.
And we've had at the Edinburgh Fringe a lot of staff members complaining about material that they've heard in shows that people have paid to see. If it happens up there, then why wouldn't it happen here?
It's going to massively increase the weaponry of oversensitive or woke activists on staff at comedy clubs or in entertainment venues.
Yes.
You know, with Jerry Sadowitz, they were able to say, if you don't no platform him, we'll walk out. We won't work tomorrow, and we'll tell our friends to boycott the venue. Once the Banter ban is in place, they'll be able to not only threaten that, but to also threaten to take their employers, the owners of the venue, to the employment tribunal if they allow someone like Jerry Sadowitz to perform. So it's going to have an absolutely devastating impact on the comedy industry.
OK, well, what can people do, Toby, to push back against this? Can they follow Free Speech Union? I mean, what's the best steps?
Well, they could certainly join the Free Speech Union, www.freespeechunion.org/join. It's cheap as chips. It's only £60 a year, only 30 if you're a student, you're on benefits, OAP, etc. But we've got a gizmo on the site which anyone can use, don't have to be a member. We talked about the impact of the Banter ban on pubs, so write to a peer to save our beer.
Yeah.
That's a campaign, and I'm trying to get people to write to peers to try and persuade them to support my amendments to at least dilute the Banter ban a little bit. Campaign, you can write to your MP off your own bat and tell them you think this is a crazy idea. There are various measures you can take, but unfortunately, even though this government is in terrible trouble, even though Keir Starmer's approval rating is, in the toilet, and even though he makes a new U-turn every bloody hour, nevertheless, awful bills like the Employment Rights Bill, which are going to have such a negative impact on our economy, not just on pubs, are sailing through Parliament. They're using their massive majority to railroad it through. I don't know what we can do. All we can do is not vote for them again, Andrew.
Well, very good advice, I would say. Toby Young, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So a government spokesperson has said the Employment Rights Bill will not affect anyone's right to lawful free speech, with this government stands firmly behind. Upsetting remarks do not fall within the definition of harassment. We are strengthening workplace protections to tackle harassment and protect employees from intimidating and hostile abuse, as well as sexual harassment. Make of that what you will. Next on Free Speech Nation, it's that time of the week. My panel will be looking at what went viral this week in social sensations, so please don't go anywhere.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's been a long old time now. Other missing cases, how do we prioritise that, despite, obviously, Madeleine McCann being one of the most high-profile mysteries of my lifetime, for sure. I think I think you're right to point out, though, that if there is even the remotest of chances, that because sometimes an individual case can symbolise and mean something more in the public consciousness than in isolation. And I think this is such a case. It's something that I think people still deeply care about. So if there's any remote chance, I think they've got to go for it.
Well, let's hope something is found. These searches, as we know, are going to continue until Friday, unless, of course, fresh evidence is found, in which case they will continue.
I take it all sort of quite personally, because we holidayed in the area. I had children the same age at the time, and there used to be posters in the airport, asking, have you seen this girl, and whatever. And my kids were very aware of it, and you'd point out and talk about it and whatever. So I often think, it could have been as easily one of my children involved in all of this, and you do take it personally.
And I think a lot of people in the country would feel that way.
Exactly.
It's in the nation's psyche, isn't it, Madeleine McCann?
Yeah.
We all know her, we know her face, we feel as though we know her as a little girl. I think everybody would like to have answers as to what happened to her.
Right, OK, so the Portuguese police are saying about this, the search warrant was issued by the Public Prosecutor's Office in Germany, which is conducting preliminary proceedings against a German citizen suspected of the murder of a British citizen, Madeleine Beth McCann.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on the dreaded social media. First up, we've got this video. Let's have a look.
Where is your heart? I believe that the people of the Arabic nations have a white heart. I believe you are good people. They are starving children. I tried to feed these children and they shot at me. For love, for humanity, for Islam. Stand with your Islamic peoples.
So just a little bit of context there. So a group of Westerners went to Egypt to try and break through the blockade at Rafah to get to the Palestinian people, and they got dragged away by a lot of Egyptian citizens who were annoyed about them being there. And it's almost like they just had to hit the brick wall of reality at some point.
The arrogance of these people to go there and lecture Egyptians through an interpreter, not even in their own language, lecture through an interpreter about what they should do about their neighbours. And obviously the Egyptians know a lot more about it than this Welsh guy does. And also to style yourself on Baldric from the first Blackadder at the same time. I mean, that is...
Well, doesn't Egypt have rather a big wall there? I mean, it doesn't really want to break that blockade, does it?
And they hadn't done it before that argument, and as if that was going to convince them. I'm glad you gave us the context, though, because I was watching that clip thinking, it's all kicking off in Swansea, isn't it?
Well, exactly. That is kind of what it looked like. Yeah. But there is a kind of weird naivety, isn't there, about sort of Western activists, like Greta Thunberg. Yeah. You know, sailing on a dinghy or whatever it was with a few Dairy Lunchables or whatever, and going there and getting surprised that the Israeli military said, no, you can't really do that.
Yeah, and taking a really, simplistic, idealistic view of a really complex, nuanced conflict, and applying this sort of Disneyfied level of good and bad to it is nonsense.
It's weird, isn't it?
And also, he was doing this really annoying thing. He was referring to it as Palestine. It's like like your mum's posh mate who goes to Barcelona. He says Palestine. It's not Palestine.
There's a bit of that. I mean, I think a lot of the Western activists, they get used to getting their own way and they glue themselves to paintings and roads. But in Egypt, they drag you away by force. They don't mess about, right? And I think you could see on the footage, they're really shocked that the locals are actually reacting in that way, because British people don't do that.
Well, spoil the rod, spoil the child, or whatever, spare the rod, isn't it? It's true. If you glue yourself to something, you're in the predicament.
Yes, you
Why
are.
have we then gone round with solvents going, we'll stop the traffic for an hour while we get involved. Bit of heat, can we apply that? In the old days, you would just leave your hands there and you'd be taken elsewhere. Yeah. So, get that reality.
Yeah. Violence is never the answer, unless it's a bunch of Western activists in Egypt, and then lots of violence is the answer.
There we go, Leo Kearse. Being ironic for those of you who are very literal-minded. Let's move on to this video. Let's have a look.
This is a public broadcast apology direct from Channel 4. It has come to the world's attention that diversity, equity and inclusion may have gone far, far too far.
He should really shut up.
Hit it, DJ!
I don't like these people, never will do.
Too many boxes being ticked.
It goes on and on like that. You can sort of imagine it. So Channel 4 are quite upset because DEI, it feels like that phase is over now. And but they're just going to double down and go even further.
Oh, they've got to get all that USAID funding somehow. You know what I mean? It's nonsense. Well, they don't seem to understand that the reason people don't like DEI isn't because the people who don't like DEI are racist. It's because DEI is racist. DEI is basically saying, you know, oh, well, look at these poor identity groups. Look at these poor black people and trans people. They can't make it without lots of leg ups. And then that means that any, you know, achievements made by black people are then, you know, are questioned because people say, well, they just got it through DEI.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a disaster for race relations, but they will insist on keep interpreting it this way, that anyone who questions this is a racist. It's so opposite of the truth. How can we get this through to Channel 4?
Well, I think you might not get it through Channel 4,
probably
I think.
not.
But in general, I always think there's an argument to be made that if this is such a core belief, you don't need an individual department to look at it. If a company is saying, do you know what, it's very important to us, well, then your manager, your top boss should be able to sort all that out. If it's that much of a thing that you're concerned about, you don't need a special department. It doesn't make any sense, and therefore it is wasteful, unless you actually just want to pull your sleeves up and get the top boss to do it.
But, you know, a lot of the kind of woke initiatives and the DEI initiatives in Hollywood, for instance, have led to things like the collapse of the Star Wars franchise, which I believe was quite lucrative at one point. You know, don't you think that maybe they'll learn at some point?
Come to the wrong man, because I think the prequels killed it anyway.
Do you think?
Jar Jar Binks can jog on. Come on, who's that?
And yet, Revenge of the Sith, I think, is a greatly underrated film.
Rogue One is the only one I'll take.
Rogue One.
You can say Rogue One and I'll throw Han Solo movie back at you.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, what an absolute
Well, let's not get into that. Let's move on to a last video now.
Is how much people hate fat people. They just hate them. Like, there's like this weird hatred it feels almost akin to racism.
This is not like racism, it is racism. Anti-fatness is rooted in anti-blackness. And the reason why people are pursuing thinness is because they're pursuing proximity to whiteness. The reason why people hate fat people is because people hate black people. And appearing curvier, bigger is associated with blackness, especially black women. And that's why they're discriminated in the workplace, overly sexualized. And this has gone back for centuries.
So there we go, Leo. Being anti-fat is racist. It's not even like racism, it is racist.
I mean, what sort of a message is that to send out? As if black people can stop being black by not eating donuts. That's absolute nonsense. Like, being anti-fat has got nothing to do with racism. If people are fat, it's that it's always been that because they're lazy and they have, you know, the poor morality and stuff. And now, it doesn't just mean they're just lazy. They're too lazy to even get a Ozempic. That's how lazy. It's almost more effort to be fat now than it is not to be fat.
What about the glandular issues and the hormonal issues or the genetic predisposition to obesity? You're forgetting about all of that, aren't you?
Yeah, like you get these body positive influencers being like, oh, I've got an overactive thyroid. It's like, no, you've got an overactive fridge door.
Now, I think we need some balance, Steve. What do you make of this?
I love everything she said, because now I've realised I'm technically black. And therefore, Channel 4, come calling. I am available for work, as it turns out most nights.
I mean, to be fair, like, no one's going to take her seriously, are they? Because isn't it a kind of a racist thing she's saying?
Oh, it's what Leo was saying for the answer for the previous one. This is racism of low expectation. You can't hate me because I'm fat because black people are fat. Wait a minute. You've just cast an aspersion there, haven't you? So, yeah, it's the idea that somehow all black people are fat is what she's just said.
Well, OK, but in all seriousness, is this stuff not going to end at this point? Because I think that sort of thing feels dated to me now. That sort of thing feels like something that would have been said 3 years ago and everyone's realised all of this stuff is absolute nonsense. At what point will they stop making their stupid TikTok videos, making these stupid declarations? How can we stop them from doing this?
You can look away. You're right, it's about 3 people on TikTok.
It is.
You don't have to pay attention to them. Let them do their little rants and cry into them. I guarantee she's got a crying video. I've not looked at her account, but you know there's one of those where they cry. There's no way that's done, like, in the first take. You have to go, I could dry off again, I need to build up I need to rehydrate for the next one.
Is that just more popular now, or is it, or is Steve saying it's actually going away, that kind of thing?
No, I don't think it's going away. Really? I think we've got a generation of absolute crybabies and people who won't take any personal responsibility for themselves, you know, and I think that it's the government's fault for, you know, funding anything you got wrong with you, anything you can turn yourself into a victim about, you know, the government will help you and you'll get extra points and victim points and be able to tick boxes on DEI forms and stuff. We should take all that away. Like, if you've got something wrong with you, straight away you get a tax. We should start taxing people's problems.
What exactly are you talking about?
So if you're like, oh, I've got ADHD or some other, made-up mental health thing, straight away, okay. Like,
what about fat tax?
Yeah, 100%. We should have different. HMRC should just have like various sized outlines, and if you can't fit through them, then...
I actually think a fat tax, because that would be a good incentive to lose weight.
Yeah.
Like I would actually lose weight if there was a fat tax.
What is the fat tax? It's how expensive food is these days. It's absolutely killing me every time I go to Tesco.
That's true. If you've got a taste for expensive cakes, then you're punishing yourself, aren't you?
No, I've got a taste for many cakes.
Yes.
And that is still as expensive.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've solved a lot tonight. I'm off to America in a couple of days, so I'm thrilled to have had this opportunity to come back for Free Speech Nation this week. Josh Howie, of course, will be back next week, hopefully. But this was the week when trigger warnings were given trigger warnings, and of course a teacher was fired for reading To Kill a Mockingbird. Thanks so much to my panel, Leo Kurz and Steve N. Allen. See you next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. As we transition into a new week, there will often be quite settled conditions around for many of us, and even out there at the moment it is relatively calm. Plenty of clear spells and dry conditions for the vast majority. A few mist and fog patches. The same can't be said for Western Scotland, though, where rain will be arriving during the second half of the night. This could turn heavy over the hills for a time. Temperatures, though, will be holding up in double-digit figures for many of us as we start off Monday morning. We do, though, have that rain in play for the far north and west of Scotland first thing on Monday. The heaviest pulses will be in the early hours, and it will tend to ease as we head throughout the day, but still fairly damp and grey to come here, and quite a brisk breeze around the coasts and hills as well. Some of that rain could just flirt with the far west of Northern Ireland, but parts of County Down probably seeing a decent amount of sunny spells, and the bulk of England and Wales will also see some sunshine pretty much from the word go on Monday morning, and that will continue throughout the day. There'll be some fair weather cloud bubbling up in places that might make the sunshine hazy at times, particularly for southern areas of England, but it will stay dry, fine and pleasant. Temperatures will also be up tomorrow compared to the values we've seen around today, so more widely across central eastern areas seeing the mid-20s of degrees Celsius. Even 20 degrees, 22 for parts of Northern Ireland, central and eastern Scotland, more around mid-teens for the far northwest. And that's because we see another weather front pushing its way in as we move overnight into the start of Tuesday. This could bring some stronger winds first thing in the morning, potentially close to gale strength around the far north of Scotland. And there'll also be this band slowly slipping its way south-eastwards. That rain will tend to weaken throughout the day, and there'll be some sunny spells developing behind that, but the most prolonged sunshine right throughout Tuesday will again be down towards the southeast. But the sunshine looks like it will develop more widely across all areas of the UK as we head towards the middle of the week, and those temperatures are also going to be climbing. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house.
£54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight,
I'm telling you that you are focusing on Pakistani grooming gangs because probably you're racist.
and here we go. Apology season is now upon us. Emily Maitlis can go first.
Calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
Then the Prime Minister can apologise too, and as for the rest of the Cabinet...
When he was Prime Minister, he repeatedly refused the requests of people saying there has to be a national inquiry to clear this up once and for all.
You know, the Conservatives could have done another national inquiry.
Well, the Chancellor had her chance this morning, and what about legacy media?
Was he in a white gang? Are we going to pretend that Muslim groups are not out there purposely targeting our youth and pimping them?
There we go. Also tonight, talking of apologies...
You smash it? Still not so. Let's get out of that.
A new study reckons sexist and homophobic jokes are rife on elite golf courses. So should men be able to enjoy harmless banter in privacy, or does it maybe cross a line? And...